I think I'm back already. I scheduled it to 10 past 10, just to give people. I saw that there was one watcher, so thanks for watching. And maybe it was me monitoring myself. I don't know. Yeah, so sorry about that stuff that happens, right? When you do live anything, live coding, live streaming. It looks now that the DJI 2, mic 2, is actually working properly. I have my, as I said, my iPad Pro as a monitor set up right next to me. And yeah, maybe I already think about what the first screen should be. Let's actually start with MCP and what this actually is, but let's give everyone, especially myself, like another minute until we start. Also go to my actual channel and see, go to Livestream tab, so I can see how this looks like, and possibly also respond to comments if there are any. Just a sec. Alright, cool. I think we're live. I think everything is working. I hope everything is working. So check one more time. DJI mic still connected. Alright, let's maybe turn the music down a little bit. I'm using audio as my license or royalty-free music provider for my YouTube videos, and I just like lo-fi beats when I'm coding or doing stuff where I want some music in the background but don't want to be distracted by it too much. Alright, so what am I doing today? What am I in the middle of doing, and thought about, hey, I could actually show that to you out there through a live stream. I am in the middle of understanding, really deep diving and grokking this thing called MCP, which is the Model Context Protocol framework that Anthropic put out, I think about 3 months ago, something like that. And how I think of it, it's a server, so it's basically a meta program that's running somewhere. It can be on your machine, it can be in the cloud somewhere, it can be on your machine through Docker or installed somewhere. And this server is exposing certain functionality to LLMs, to GenAI, to assistants, to agents, however you want to reason about this, or whatever the fitting term for you is when you think about this. I particularly want to use MCP servers and the tools that they expose and provide. So whatever you're exposing, you can think of in tools. I usually think of it in skills. So there are certain skills that you want your LLM or your coding agents or your GenAI agents. Let's call them agents, right? I know it's a bit of a hype term, but we're moving toward that direction, and maybe possibly like 80% of the use cases should rather be still framed as assistants, right? Or let's not get caught up in this. Let's call them agents, with the disclaimer that I know that a true agent has lots of stuff it needs to do regarding, for example, how autonomous it's behaving. Obviously, what I'm showing you today is not that yet, because I particularly want to extend the skills or the tools that my coding assistant within Cursor has access to. Right? And by putting whatever I want the tools or the skills to be in an MCP server, I can make that available to whatever coding model you're actually using in Cursor in the composer mode, which is kind of like the agentic way of conversing basically or interacting with your coding assistant. Now I'm using assistant again. I don't know, maybe let's call them coding assistants for now, because we are focusing on cursor. The same thing though will work as well in windsurf if you're more into windsurf. So kind of like that as a primer on how to reason on a top level about what MCP actually is. And a very good blog post is actually is this one that Cloudflare put out. I will put all of this in the video description, obviously. A quick primer and how to actually do it, right? With how to come up and put together your own MCP server. Obviously, this is JavaScript. I'm doing my MCP server and implementing them with Python. And a huge shout out to Kirill Markin. I hope I don't butcher your name here, because Kirill came out with a MCP server template that you can use, and it's a ready-to-use server template. Ready-to-use meaning that you can actually go and deploy it on Heroku. I'm leaning more towards Railway for deployment, so I will see at some point if I can do the same thing with a nice deploy button, deploy to Heroku, if I can do the same thing to Railway, which is another, it's kind of like Heroku, but a bit, I don't want to say anything bad about Heroku, but it is a bit aged by now, and Railway is kind of the successor in some way. More on that maybe possibly in another video, because I won't be able to do that today. You find alternative setup methods. You see how you can actually clone what I did is to clone the GitHub repo and then make it your own basically. The nice thing, it ships with everything, with all the bells and whistles that you need to use or to get your MCP server up and running through Docker, which I really like. And basically, once you started it, I talked about this thing exposing stuff. It's running as a server. If you start it on your machine, it will be accessible through localhost on whatever port you set. The default port is 8000. And SSE, I'm not too firm yet with the exact connection methods. There's definitely SSE, and there's a way of connecting to it through basic terminal commands. That's the second thing. And if you're running it and deploying it or hosting it somewhere, and so that it's accessible through a URL, then I think you need to use SSE. And a bit further down, there's the option to run it through or expose it to the world through Smithery. I'm not that familiar yet with that. I think it's closely connected to NPM, the NPM ecosystem. And this is the typical way that that a lot of people use to connect, or to maybe show you that just before we actually get going with my MCP server. The way you can set them or make Cursor know that you want to use this and that MCP server is to go to the Cursor settings, find the feature tab, scroll a bit down until you see or find the MCP servers section. And here you can add a new MCP server. And basically what you need to do is to give it a name. You can here select between SSE and commands. So we, for example, needed to use SSE. And then basically here you can put, sorry, my dock settings. My dock basically shows up on the iPad, so I need to see which program I'm opening. So you can basically copy this, and this is what you will find on the internet. You will find a lot of MCP servers that are available through Smithery. So you would just copy this command here and go back to Cursor and basically put it here. But then in this case, you need to input or select command as a connection type. Right? And this is actually, I can actually show you that for a server that I didn't develop, which is the packages stock server, a fixed version of that. This thing actually was, I forked it, I forked the repo and managed to get it running on my machine, which you can see, and I'm calling it on my machine, which you can see by, this is a local path, right? It's not coming from Smithery, and it's just calling an index.js file, which kind of lists all the tools or the skills that my server or this server exposes. And we chose command type as a connection, or the command type as a connection type, and that's for this one. And the other one is actually, I didn't come up with a cool name yet. It's still called test. That's the one I'm currently developing. When we look into that, you see that this is connection type SSE, because we're calling the MCP server that is running at our local, on our local host at port 8000, right? And I started with this yesterday, and I would just catch you up briefly and then go into or finish what I actually want to do. Let me think of how best to start here. Let's start maybe definitely with a new conversation. So we are, if you're not familiar with Cursor yet, you can hit Command and Shift and L to open this, I don't know how they call the meta pane here or panel. I call it the chat panel or the composer panel. Whatever you want to call it. It's where the conversation with your coding LLM or LLMs, because you can select obviously out of a list of a lot of them right now, or many of them, where you can converse with it, right? So in my case, yesterday I wanted to try out the new 3.5 Sonnet model from Anthropic that I think they released it 2 or 3 days ago. Before that, I was really happy with using Claude 3.5 Sonnet, but I'm going back to 3.7. And if you want to use your server, it seems only to work when you are using or conversing with your LLM, interacting with your LLM through the composer and the agents in the agent mode. So it didn't work for me if I selected the normal mode in the composer, and it also didn't work for me if you're only in the chat mode, right? So you need to make sure you're in the composer tab and in the agent mode. Let's get rid of that as well. Currently, my server was running, but I'll show you really quick on how to actually start it. Let's maybe also go with some music. Let's actually open up a new tab here with localhost 8000 SSE. When you go there, obviously nothing happens because nothing is running yet, right? This will change by, actually let's start off with 2 new fresh terminals. Y2 you will see in a minute. One thing, now I might have shot myself in the foot a bit, because I'm switching, or this entire thing, this MCP server is built on top of UV, which is, I think of it as a package manager, dependency manager for Python, and also a framework that helps in creating Python packages. It's similar to Poetry, which you might be familiar with. I used Poetry before. I really love Poetry. I always wanted to try out UV though, and so I'm learning multiple things at the same time, which is like the usual state of being for myself. But it's a bit different how UV and Poetry handle the virtual environments, which you should always use, because it nicely encapsulates all your dependencies of your code projects and have it nicely decoupled. And I think, let me see. without asking. It's definitely, it should be source venv bin, and then it's activate. I'm not sure. I think it's not enough. Let's see if you do a pip list. Yeah, it's not that. Shoot. Was it this one? Okay, so I have to ask, how do I activate my venv through, because otherwise obviously the dependencies are not going to be recognized. Okay. Oh no, sorry, I thought this was, in poetry there's poetry shell which initializes, or which basically activates the, you can also specify custom location. Yeah, I don't think this is, I'm a bit puzzled that I don't see any of my package dependencies, but let's try. What I want to do now is to start my server. The server is basically, it's Dockerized. So here's the Docker file, if you're familiar a bit with Docker. If not, I highly recommend checking it out because it just eases so much of the deployment pains. It doesn't take them away completely, but you're much better off with, actually this one is not needed anymore in the Docker Compose file. That's the second file that's important. You don't need to use Docker Compose. You can spin up a Docker container just by handling the Docker file, but Docker Compose makes things easier, at least on your local machine. Not so much for deployment, but we get to that in another life, in another video. So the cool thing about Docker Compose is that you can now then just run Docker Compose build, and I don't do it in detached mode. That's why I like to use at least 2 terminals. I want to see what's going on, and oh sorry, Docker Compose up obviously. And if you do it in detached mode, which would happen if you added a -d or a -d, then everything would happen in the background, and sometimes it's harder to catch errors. So I like things to be more explicit when I develop. So we need to wait a little, and then we get the info that the server is running. So we can either click here or follow the link here, or go back to our server, refresh the page, and now you should see that the endpoint, or you should see something, right? It doesn't make sense to us. It's really cryptic, but everything works now. You see the pings, basically the same thing that happens here. So this just means your server is running. So what can the server do, you might ask? What is this all about? What are you actually developing? So let me maybe close off all of the things we don't need. So there is a server.py file. It lives in this subfolder here, MCP simple tool, which is the name of the Python package that kind of bundles everything, right? How do I know that? I talked about UV and Poetry. Both frameworks are relying on this thing called PyProject TOML, which is basically kind of like the V card basically of yours, like kind of like the Visitenkarte in German. I don't know how to say that in English. Where the business card of your whatever you're developing, right? And it has the name MCP simple tool. And by convention, there needs to be a folder that corresponds to the name of your, or at least hyphen and underlines is kind of another thing in Python land. But there should be, I don't know if there needs to be this folder, but I think it's good practice to have a folder where you actually combine all the production code that your package is composed of. And server.py lives in exactly this folder, right? So if we go in here, we see, so what do we see here, right? Whatever you see here basically are the tools that you are exposing through your MCP server. So there are a couple of things that were already there. For example, fetch website and check mood. This is kind of like the hello world thing. We'll try that out in a second, but let me go through the tools list here really quickly. So fetch railway docs and and the other one regarding to railway docs is something I tried out. It's not, this is the first thing I tried out I wanted to have a tool that pulls in the developer documents for the CLI of railway, which is kind of a similar thing as Heroku, as I mentioned before. But it's not as polished. It's not polished enough. It just it just grabs the raw HTML, and this kind of like lets the context window explode. So I need to parse it into Markdown and with some tooling. But yesterday I decided, hey, it would be cooler to focus on tools that help me in taking my prompt templates, I will talk about that in a second, and put them into tools that I can then give to my coding assistants to say, hey, use this and that prompt template, right? And the prompt templates and the tools that kind of offer the prompt templates that I managed to develop yesterday was the prompt template for the initial conversation starter, the proceed with the next stage prompt template, I have a change request and do something with it, or carry it out or implement it please prompt template, and the fix template, which consists of a root cause analysis of what actually went wrong, and then how to fix it in a structured way that I can be more confident about that it doesn't break any existing code, right? This is the entire reason why I'm tackling my coding challenges with prompting templates. And maybe let's just look at really briefly at one of those tools. As you can see, it's not a lot of code. There is some stuff that's happening in the background, which I will get to in a second. But basically, this is just a basic Python function, right? And you can structure it however you want to structure your Python function. The return value needs to be in a certain way so that the entire server infrastructure works, but this is kind of like not that complicated. And in particular, my tool here, my tool function, basically just loads and renders a prompt template that I have stored in a folder. I will show you that in a second. It loads it and returns the markdown content as a return value, right? So it seems a bit involved because there's this render prompt template step in between, but we basically just have an ID of which prompt template we want to load, and it's loaded and kind of like exposed as a return value. Now, all of my prompt templates are living in the same kind of like meta folder or parent folder that our entire code base, the actual part of the code base that matters for the functionality, it's a subfolder of that parent folder. If we open that, we see in the templates folder there's a prompt folder, and then there are currently four subfolders for the various prompt templates. Why 4 subfolders? Because I want to be able to version all of my prompt templates properly with semantic versioning. And so we are dealing with the tool for loading the initial prompt template. So I would find initial prompt. The naming is still a bit subject to change probably, how I structure this here, but I know that the initial prompt template lives here, and this is the one with version of, or this has the version 1.00, so version 1, and this is basically how it is structured. So the actual part that matters and that is returned is basically this, right? And let me think about what to explain first. Maybe before we actually go to the panel on the right, it has a bit of metadata, which is handled by this intermediary step of loading everything here with the render prompt template framework or mechanism. It's not a framework, it's just a mechanism. So this is just stuff that you can mentally basically forget about now. The main part of my current templating game is this part, right? Where I tell the coding assistant what I want from it. I had great results with using a bit of XML notation for denoting or marking up logical parts in my prompt template. For example, this portion here, or this section is, what's your task, right? What's your agency? Proved really valuable for me is to tell the coding assistant, always choose the most straightforward and the most direct implementation, right? Be laser focused in that. Do not try to make every little thing like the most, don't blow it up into a huge complicated mechanism of dealing with the back end, for example, or the database. Just choose the most straightforward way of doing what we want to do, right? And there's other stuff. I mean, I might go into detail about this when it's fitting. This specific instruction part, forget about it now. It's not that important. It's just something I experiment with. And yeah, that's for that. So this is basically just a short overview of how you can think of the MCP server and the actual thing where the tool definition happens. In our case, which is a Python-based MCP server, this happens in this server.py file. There's some other stuff in here that is important, but not that important to discuss in detail for now, which is basically, where do I find this serialized content? It's fetch. Yeah, it's the fetch tool part. So basically we need some type of registry. We need to register our tools. It's not enough to just define them. We need to register them inside this fetch tool function. So you can see this if and else statements. So the coding assistant can basically decide which tool to call based on your prompt that you're giving on the right hand side, which we'll do shortly. And there's a second thing that's actually, I think, only for listing and basically registry purposes or cataloging purposes. Which tools do I have? And no, sorry, this might even be more important for the coding assistant, because it basically lays out what tools do I have access to and what are the arguments or the parameters of that tool that I can call and that I can tweak, basically, right? For example, with the mood, we have one question, which is kind of our argument. Not too familiar with that though. Let's just look at one of our own. So the properties are the issue. We can add specific instructions. So this is the prompt, the fix prompt, right? So what's the issue actually? When I describe, hey, this happened, the coding assistant would take this issue description and basically forward it to the tool as a value for the function argument issue. And the same thing goes for the specific instruction thing. This is what will end up here, right? I told you it's not that important yet, but just so you can kind of form your mental model of what's going on. And then, as I said, I want to version my my prompt template. So I would even be able to, in the prompt on the right hand side, to tell the coding assistant which version of the coding template that underlies this tool that I'm calling I want to use, right? So this is just for the sake of completeness of so you can form your mental model or picture of how this server.py file actually is roughly composed. All right, this has been a lot of talk, obviously, for without showing anything. So let's actually show you how this works. Let's maybe check back if everything is running once more before we actually try to call it. So I go back to the cursor settings, go to the feature tab, and just hit the refresh button here. You see the name is test. I could tweak that, obviously. Let's do that actually. Let's call this the prompt template server. And you see all the tools that are actually available or exposed through this MCP server, right? So we have our get prompt initial, get prompt fix, and the stuff that we already saw in the server.py file. All right, so let's close that down. And since we know now that everything is up and running, we can come back to the Composer tab, make sure that we are in agentic mode here, select whatever LLM we want to use, and then we can fire something like, what's your mood? Right, this is the basic Hello World tool that shipped with the server template. And it should be calling in a second now. My internet is a bit, sorry, no, the internet should not be of an issue here. It's a demonstration effect. Interesting. So I'm telling it to call the, oh, interesting. That's the demonstration effect at its best, because it's not calling our server. Okay. Interesting. Live coding. Always so much fun. Then let's actually continue with the tools that I want to create. Let me just read through this. Oh yeah, the snake game one. Okay, yeah, that's actually quite good. That should work. This is something that I did as a test yesterday. I'm deleting this game plan deliberately. Or let's not completely delete it. Let's put it into archive. Let's also give it a let's rename it so the coding agent is not confused by finding two game plans that deal with the game of Snake that we are about to create with our prompting templates, or based on our prompting templates and the tools. So let's maybe make sure once more that we reset everything, right? We're starting off fresh with a fresh conversation and a fresh composer. Maybe this was the thing. I just realized that this was set to normal. Let's try it once more. What's your mood? Now we're talking. So the latency is still an issue, right? Whenever you talk or whenever you have an MCP server that you throw into the mix, things will be slower than when you just interact with your LLM directly, basically. But you have access to whatever tools you wanna create, and it did call the tool. You see that here, or it is about to call the tool, calling MCP tool mood, right? Which is, let me bring up the server settings once more, or the server config, which is one of the tools that is listed in our prompt template server right here, right? And the default way of interacting with MCP servers is that you, the user, need to confirm each action. There is a setting though, enable YOLO mode. When you set this or check the checkbox here, then it will just auto confirm, right? That's why YOLO, hence the name YOLO. You need to decide for yourself if that's something you would like, or if that's too risky for you. So it tells us the server is feeling great and happy to help you. Maybe since this is a Hello World example, let's actually go to the mood function, which is the tool, right? That in MCP server lingo, this is the tool. And it's really important, it's really structured really easily. It's just returning, I'm feeling great and happy to help you. And the coding assistant kind of wraps whatever comes from the tool into, or weaves it into its own response mechanism, basically, right? So it added the server and then is feeling, right? So the server, actually the tool, responded with I'm feeling blah blah blah. And the agent, or sorry, the coding assistant is picking that up and forming or turning that into a cohesive, coherent, normal sentence, basically. So it doesn't seem too patched or stitched together. Okay, so this is the demonstration effect. I counted the demonstration effect. Sorry about that. So always make sure you are in agentic mode here in the Composer tab. And let's just actually kick things off. We want to create the game of Snake, at least show you how to use our prompt templates to kick things off for developing the game of Snake, or a game of Snake. And what I would do is to say, I would like to create a version of the game Snake, please. And I'm currently still very explicit in my tool usage prompts, basically. Please use tool get prompt initial, right? Before we can actually already fire this off. I show you the prompt template of, first I show you the initial. I show you the function that the tool actually consists of. It's the same as all the other functions. It just loads a different prompt template. And this is the initial prompt. Now, when we look at how this template looks like, you will see that this is basically the prompt of starting a conversation, a new Composer conversation, at least my style of starting it. I'm basically describing the task, the actual task, and the project comes in here. Let's see how it actually, yeah, so the project is create a new version of the Snake game. This is injected in here into the prompt template. And then basically I define in the same way, give me your agency. What's your, what do I want you to remember when it comes to the how to do things. Yeah, and the other stuff is just the typical stuff that I put at the end. The crucial part here in this particular prompt template is that I'm asking for a game plan. And this has proven to be the most valuable thing actually in the interaction with my coding assistants, because it, from the get-go, it structures what and how we want to accomplish our goal in a way that is both beneficial to the Gen AI and the human meatbag that's sitting here, right? Because it's laid out in a plan. And thus we have both the option or the possibility to reason about this. And I can stay in the driver's seat, at least in a supervisor mode. So we just confirm this, and you see that the actual prompt template is fed back to the coding assistant. And it, at the very end, this is something that I'm still experimenting with. I'm saying, hey, whatever you just got back from your tool is an actual prompt. So use it or treat it as if I had written or copied this prompt template into the text box down here, right? Don't try to just reason about this or treat it as context, but as an actual instruction of what should happen next. And part of the thing here is management summary. So I'm asking it in your agency. Obviously, this could also be in the section, your task, right? This is kind of like still fuzzy. It's where do you put things? How do you label sections? I don't know. It's all a work in progress. But what I did do at some point here is to say, hey, I want a management summary of what you're about to do, how you want to tackle this, right? So it's giving me that, giving me the management summary. And it is before we create the detailed game plan, which it also picked up on. So I'm asking it to give me a game plan. It just comes back with a couple of questions that it wants me to ask. That's interesting. I should probably put, for example, Python and my entire tech stack that I want to use. For example, we're using UV, so we're using Python. We're using UV as dependency manager. We're using SQL model to abstract our database models and combine it with validation models. The other way would be to say Pydantic for validation and SQL Alchemy for the SQL side, right, the models, and so on and so forth. So we could put this should probably put this into a, hey, this is our tech stack prompt template, or combine it, integrate it into the initial prompt template here. What else is it asking us? Any specific features you'd like to include beyond classic snake gameplay? Interesting. What timestamp? Exactly. What timestamp should I use for the game plan document? This is something I explicitly ask for in here, so that my game plans are all nicely structured. I can show you that in a second here. When I go into open my game plans folder, there's some archived stuff. And if we look at the archived stuff, it should, I'm striving for the same file name structure, and it always starts with game plan. Then there are kind of like stubs for, is it a feature, is it a fix, is it an idea? I don't know. Feature and fix are probably the two most important ones. And then after that, there comes a timestamp, so everything is nicely organized. And then after that, there comes an ID or another stub for what just as a short name for what we actually want to do or fix, right? For the feature or the fix. And it's asking me, in particular, I'm asking it to ask me for the timestamp, because the coding assistant itself does not have any notion of time. It does not know that we are on the 27th of February, right? So I'll just say answers. We're using Python, UV as dependency manager. Yeah, that should suffice. Then for the second question, I would like to have bombs appearing every time the snake eats a new fruit. Bombs that appeared once, so we are making it harder and harder in each iteration for the snake to navigate the canvas, basically, because there are more and more bombs popping up. Bombs that appeared once will stay in place. Also add a super fruit with a different color that adds 3 elements to the snake. It should randomly appear and disappear with a delay of 5 seconds. And number 3, I will just put down 2025 to 27, and how did I actually structure it, with a hyphen or a, sorry, I'm pedantic about this stuff. I think I used a underscore, didn't I? No, I used a hyphen. Okay. So let's say this is the timestamp, and let's actually leave the Explorer open. And once we hit respond, basically, or submit, it will create the game plan. And as I said, it will show up in here. This is the most crucial part. That's why it comes in the initial, as my initial step in the initial prompt template for starting off conversations. Because it's laying out, you see, it's written to the game plan subfolder, and let's confirm that. It's so cool because it's as I said, it lays out the entire plan, right? And the entire plan is subdivided or structured by stages. And each stage obviously consists of tasks, right? And while the exact layout of tasks and stages always differs a bit, in the prompt template, I'm telling it to, I can show you that, clearly defined stages. This is something I put in here, and including checkboxes, right? I could be a bit more precise on how I want the checkboxes to look like and where they should live. But the checkboxes are basically those things. And whenever we are done with a task, the coding assistant would go into the game plan and mark a certain section or a certain task, a certain stage as completed by putting an X in there. I don't know if it's lowercase or uppercase. Doesn't matter, but we'll see that in a second. So that's the second cool thing. The stages, the overall game plan is there. It's nicely divided into stages. And the third cool thing is that the stages are usually scoped narrowly enough that you can go through it in, I don't know, let's say, depending on the complexity, 3 to 5 minutes to maybe 10 minutes of interacting with the coding assistant about just that one stage. So it's not things that, kind of run off into like 30 minutes or an hour of trying to get this just one stage done, right? Which is good because you, as a human, can reason about what's actually happening in that stage and where we are in the entire process. And it gives you time to commit each completed stage to Git, which I did forget about in the beginning. I just had like an infinite conversation with my coding assistant here. And obviously you can always jump back to previous checkpoints, which is kind of like doing a git revert or git reset. I'm still always confusing the two. Jumping back in the revision, basically, or in the version tree or version history. It's called a bit different in Windsurf, but you basically have the same functionality. But it's quite risky to just rely on jumping back here, because once you start a new conversation or something goes wrong, there's no systematic way of jumping back to a code stage that that you might want to jump back to, because this stage still worked. After that, I tried a couple stuff and the LLM went loosey-goosey and forgot about the context and hallucinated, which is always a risk that's real. And so for me, it proved quite beneficial to up my Git game a bit more and to actually provide time to actually do Git commits. And I actually am telling it that it should, I think, maybe not in the initial prompt, but let's show you another prompt real quick. In the proceed prompt, I explicitly tell it to stop, and at least I thought so. Okay, it's not I didn't put Git in here, but a commit message, right? At the end, I'm saying after you completed a stage, provide a detailed but concise commit message. It knows that it's for Git or for version control, even though I didn't mention that explicitly. We'll see that in a second as well. But so that was the game plan, right? So the key takeaway, it's really good. It's a really good idea, I think, at least, to structure whatever you want to do in a game plan, so that you can come back to and where are we actually, what's already done, what's left to do. And so we just continue. So it decides as one of the first step, create project directory structure. So it would start off with the game of Snake. Why not? I mean, I will, since it will be, let me think. I'll do the following. It obviously will mess up my dependencies because this is the server architecture. So let me do it in the right way and actually do a checkpoint here that I can then continue working after doing the live stream. So we do a git add all, git commit freeze before snake demo, and let's put that into an own branch. Let's call that freeze before snake demo, and then jump back to the main branch. Check out main. I'm just looking at my monitor if that's big enough to read on the live stream, but I think it is. Otherwise, just drop me a comment. No one in the chat. I'm not even know if anyone is watching. Probably not. Just fine. I can handle it. Okay, and off we go. Oh, actually, let's make this even a bit better. We check out a new branch, which is snake demo. So we better safe than sorry, right? And off we go. So it will now create the snake game directory, the assets. It will just do whatever it needs to do in the first stage. Actually, that's a very good thing. Something that it should have started exactly like this. Actually, let's yeah, because I want to also improve my server. Let's actually jump back. Let's jump back completely, because what the assistant should have done is to stop after presenting the game plan and asking me, do you want to continue with stage 1? Another prompt template would kick in, the proceed prompt template. It didn't do that, so I need to tweak my prompt templates a bit. So it stopped here. That's good. So we are sorry, but we are kicking this into the trash. And let me think. Let's actually go back to main. Yeah, it's ahead of origin because I didn't push to the remote repo. We are going into our templates, the initial templates, the prompt templates, that is, initial prompt, and we're actually copying that and increase the patch version, or the patch digit, and let's actually put this further down. And this is the crucial part. I put this at the very end. I hope it's not at the very end anymore. I learned that stuff at the very end is, in fact, even seems to have a stronger effect, a recall effect, than putting things at the very top of your prompt. I mean, there's the needle in the haystack effect that you might be familiar with, when everything in the middle kind of is really risky. The longer the prompt is really risky that the LLM just misses out on a certain fact. But stuff at the very beginning and the very end is usually stuff that it recalls quite well. However, at the bottom or at the end seems to have the upper hand even in the recall game. So this is why the highlighted portion was the last sentence, and it worked. But since it didn't ask me for, let's do it like this, very important, because both is very important, obviously. Yeah. You never just proceed with implementing stages, implementing the stages. You always ask for my confirmation before proceeding with the stage laid out in the game plan. The game plan is already mentioned before, so I think I can phrase it as a bit shorter, a bit more concisely. And so let's see. We can confirm if the new templating version is selected, because in my render prompt template thing here, let me go back to the server. In this, there should be the version, there's version stuff, and this function can reason about what's the latest version, which prompt template has the latest version, and it will use that by default if I don't specify a version. That's the thing that's implemented here. So we should see our new version. Obviously, it will not happen automatically. You need to rebuild your server. So I'm stopping the Docker Compose here, the Docker Compose runtime basically. And I'm rerunning this command, Docker Compose up -- build, to make sure it actually rebuilds the entire thing. Otherwise, if you don't do that, stuff is cached in the Docker framework relies heavily on caching, which is most of the time it's quite good, especially in CI/CD pipelines. But it's usually not good when you are actively developing something, because you wanna actually be sure that your most recent code changes actually are reflected in the server. So it's always good to rebuild, even though this takes a bit longer, obviously, depending on the complexity of your Docker image. Obviously, that is. Right, and one thing, I think you don't need to restart. I'm pretty sure you don't need to restart Cursor entirely, but I think it's mandatory that you at least refresh it, right, once it's done building. So the LLM actually, or Cursor as a meta framework basically, has access to the most recent state of your MCP server. And pip install is actually that low, probably because my internet connection up here where I'm sitting at the moment is just not good, especially regarding the latency. Let me see if I can. Yeah, wow. We are. I don't even know if that's enough for the live stream. We are in the kilobit region, which is really bad. Interesting. Something actually happening here. I hope the live stream is still. Let me check if we're actually even still live streaming. Yeah, seems to work. I hope the picture quality is also still somewhat okay-ish. Okay, we are in the megabit, but low megabit range. Let's cancel that and try to do that again. Another thing that I didn't think about before starting the live stream. If it's just me up here, things usually are okay, but for video calls and YouTubing, it's insane basically. I'm waiting for fiber. I think it's called fiber in English, Glasfaser in German. But Telekom, if you're watching this, get going. It's been over half a year now that we applied. Okay, at least seems to go a bit faster and move at all, at least a bit compared to before. So it's just so random. That's the thing that's bothering me. before it definitely was done by now. Maybe in the meantime, let's give a shout out to a couple of people. Kirill Markin, I already mentioned him. So this basically is the thing I'm currently developing. The picture's not loading, unfortunately, which is a little idea that I had a couple months ago, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Gen AI Coding Galaxy. And here you find this page here, the Scratchpad, is already published, quick and dirtily as a Notion site. You can see it here on the browser. So this is how you can access it. It's a complete work in progress. It's quick and dirty, but some of my viewers asked me if I could share the actual prompt templates. I will share them through my MCP server quite soon, but here you have the raw prompt templates that you can just copy and paste into your cursor panel down here, right? If you don't want to rely on anything MCP server like. You can also see the evolution of the prompts a bit. I manually versioned them, and you see the headings here correspond to the prompt template types basically that I need, right? There's an initial prompt, then there's the proceed with the next stage prompt. It goes up until here. That's the most recent version. There's a change request prompt. This is quite new. There's the very important root cause analysis and fix prompt. And there's two things I would like to actually turn into tools in my MCP server that I didn't touch yet yesterday, which is the fix linter errors and run unit test prompt template, right? So you can check them out if you want to. We're still not finished, so that gives me time to actually do the shout out, because there's also a section on MCP and Archon, and you see some stuff about registries, so basically catalogs of MCP servers that other people already developed and that you can just use. For example, Smithery is one, or Smithery AI has lots of MCP servers that you can just use and integrate into Cursor, Windsurf, Cloud Desktop, whatever you wanna do, or wherever you want to use them. There's also the two websites that I showed in the very beginning. This is the official documentation. This is the Cloudflare blog post. And a huge shout out to, let me see, where did oh yeah, in the playground, I think I mentioned Cole, sorry, I'm so bad with names. This is AI Jason. Huge shout out to him. Really awesome guy and with great content. And the other one I want to give a shout out is Cole Medine. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Cole. Learning a lot from you. Standing on the shoulders of giants of the entire, it feels like the entire, why am I not? Okay, internet issues. So Cole does awesome stuff. He also developed an agentic framework that relies heavily on MCPs as well, called Archon. Yeah, go check it out. It's awesome content. When you go to, so basically the last couple of videos were actually about this. I think here he started 2 weeks ago with putting out Archon and referencing that or building on top of that in later videos or more recent videos. All right, now we're finished. Great, at least finally, and we can refresh, and we'll go back to our composer and actually go back into, let's actually also delete the game plan, right? Let's start from scratch. Sorry, game plans. And wait, not so fast. Let's copy our answers first, because we will probably need to do the same thing. Let's actually show the specific instructions part. Again, I'm really explicit here, which I probably wouldn't need to be. It would probably be enough to say, hey, these are the explicit instructions, and not putting it into markup or XML lingo, basically, or XML markup. So I'm basically, it shouldn't ask us anymore, because it should know now what we want to. Let's see if it is also able to handle the timestamp. And let's go for 11:15. Right, and off we go. We should see our updated template. Let's maybe move to that, where we have this very important at the end. This is the call to the tool, and you see it added the value for the, let me make this a bit bigger, for this function argument. The value is, it's taking the value from my initial, from what I put into my initial prompt here as a additional information, right? So we run the tool and we scroll down, and you see the very important part, right? So we're definitely using our most recent version, and now I'm, no, wait. I forgot, I was too fast, because I'm still in, I switched back to main. Obviously, I do not want to do that, so sorry about this. Live coding. Let's actually check this out. Restore. Let's actually restore this. Restore it. So there is the new. There's the game plan we deleted. There's the new prompt, right? Let's be thorough about this, right? Do it the right way. Git add, git commit initial prompt template v1.01 git checkout. Oh. Git merge main snake demo. I think this is isn't even necessary, and this is me not knowing Git. Okay, fast forward, I think is already automatically done. So now we are in the right branch, and we should have our most recent initial prompt. Yeah, perfect. Now we can get going by submitting our prompt. We'll call the tool. Again, same structure. It is using the latest one, which we'll see by seeing the very important part here. It does its thing. Interesting. Oh no, it's creating the source subdirectory and test subdirectory. It should actually start off initially with the game plan. So interesting. It's still buggy in a way, or it's not behaving this exact same way as it would if we copied the prompt template into our manually, basically. And so it's not, I don't like this at all, right? So just for the sake of the demo now, so that we can proceed, treat make sure you make absolutely sure that you internalize and follow the instructions listed in the very important section. The tool response is your actual prompt that I want you to follow. Obviously, all of this, the entire reason why I'm trying to wrap my prompt templates into tools is that I don't need to do stuff like this, right? But it's, I mean, it's an experiment. It's not working yet as I intend to, but I'm sure I'll get there somehow. And just for, this is kind of like a, let's stop this actually. Kind of like a dirty hack at this point. The tool response is your actual prompt that I want you to follow to the T, I think. Is that how you say that? I don't know. I know the saying, but I don't know how to write it, basically. So let's actually jump back, try this once more. I wanted to start with the game plan, and then I wanted to ask me if it should proceed with the first stage of the game plan. That's the thing I want. All right, game plans, that's good. It does have that already. It creates the game plan with the right timestamp. Okay, so it picked up on that as well. Good. And then it should stop. It should ask me, do you want me to proceed with stage 1? And then another prompt template will kick in. And it also already marked this as complete, which is correct, I guess, because we probably still already had the snake game. Yeah, why not? We're in a safe space. We're in it will create a source folder directly below our root directory, but I can roll it back because we're in a separate branch. So this is the crucial part. Next steps after approval, and it should actually ask for the approval. And I will kind of intervene here to say, please ask for my confirmation before continuing with implementing or tackling or whatever, or stepping through the game plan, because I want to show the second prompt template that we want to use, that we can use. Okay, so this is actually what should have come back, or what the assistant should have come back with. Here's a game plan. Would you like me to start with section 1 or with stage 1, which is all of this stuff here, right? And I'm saying, yeah, I want you to do that, but not, I want to confirm it, and I wanted to do this in a really specific way. So please call tool, again, really specific, get prompt proceed, and follow and treat the response as your prompt instructions. Let's look at this prompt template for proceeding. It basically, in your task, it just says, hey, proceed with the next stage in the game plan. So nothing more, right? So the idea is, once we have the game plan, I basically only need to say next, 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 stage by stage. And we run the tool. You see that this is the exact thing that comes back. I told it explicitly, hey, treat whatever comes back as actual prompt. I already put it down here. This is the actual prompt for guiding your next steps. And so it should do the stuff that's in the stage 1. After it is finished with that, it should come back with a git commit message. What it didn't pick up on is that we want to use UV because we don't need a requirements .text. But okay, let's not get caught up on this. I already told you that this is still, experimental. So a lot of moving parts here that need to come together. We're mainly focused, or I'm mainly interested in getting the MCP server up and running initially. So now it's stopped. This is probably only due to my internet connection. Demonstration effect. So I'm just thinking about what the best way is to get out of this loop or retry. Okay, now it comes back. Now let's create the main game file and entry point. It's always follow closely if main game file and entry point, the readme, right? It should, after the creating the main.py file, it should say that I'm done with stage 1. Let's see. Obviously some init stuff, so it's a module, can be treated as a module, the snake game. So here we are in source. This is how I usually lay out my Python projects when I use Poetry, to have a source folder. In the source folder, there's a folder for whatever the package name should be, with underscores, not hyphens. It took me a while to figure that out. A couple months ago, because back then I was still new, or rather new, to Python, at least when it comes to developing Python packages. And right then below that directory, there's the actual stuff that's happening, even though, yeah, let's see. I mean, you can do it many ways. Let's just not get caught up on this. I'm just looking. Okay, so that actually does not work how I intended it to be. It's interesting. It must be that the tool responses are not equivalent to prompts that are entered here, because I can really assure you, I can prove it to you in another video, that if you copy and paste the prompt templates, the coding assistant will follow it closely, right? So it would have stopped after stage 1. So let's just maybe accept all, because I want to see where it stops, even though it didn't stick to what we actually agreed on in the prompt template. You see it already created stage 3 even, which is still not bad. I mean, it's still better. I think it's still better than nilly-willy vibe coding. I really like the term, but I always strive for the best of at least both worlds, or 2 worlds, which is vibe coding, but with guardrails. And the game plan are my guardrails, the prompt templates, and stopping after each stage are the guardrails within the guardrail, basically. And this is not working yet, right? But the meta guardrail it's looking at least good enough to, it reassures me that it is at least following the game plan and not doing whatever it decides to do. So let's just step through that manually once. Next step, okay. Yeah, interesting. Lots of stuff it blazes through, right? So I need to find a way to really make it understand that it should stop after each stage. There is the commit message now at the very end. This should have happened after each stage, but okay, for now it's okay, right? As a first step here. So I would say git add all, git commit, and then I just copy the commit message. And the game is now ready to play. Obviously, that's what we all want to see. So let's try to run it directly in here. So I'm prompting. I manually prompt now because I think we now in a weird spot between parts of the project using UV. Also having requirements.txt for Pygame and PyTest. Please account for that in the way we handle dependencies, also regarding the venv. So I'm guessing that we get rid of requirements.txt completely. Okay, we have a setup script. I should have read that, obviously. Let's actually run this. Is it directly set up? Yeah. Okay, it's setting up virtual environment. Okay, good, but it's still using UV. Cool. Updating the README, also cool. And then yeah, okay, PyProject's TOML stuff needs to be in sync, obviously. It rewrites it because this is before it used to be the project of the MCP server. Since we are in an own branch, this is completely fine. Sure, do your thing. We're done here, git ignore. Sure, commit message. Oh, interesting, it's actually persisting them. Didn't ask them to, but asked it to. Okay, then let's on the game then. So what are we calling? Source venv bin activate. So exactly what I did before. I think we need to add a -v there. Let's see. This is something I learned yesterday, I think. Yep, this looks better. The game canvas should come up. Yep. Okay. Oh, this wasn't a fruit. Interesting. But where's my fruit? So there's no fruit, there's just bombs. All right. So obviously not a good snake game per se, but this was it's not the focus obviously of today. I just wanted to show you how to use tools and ideally how to use MCP server tools together with my project template, my prompt templates. That connection is still off, as we've seen, but maybe let's do one or two remaining tasks of actually using or taking the remaining, sorry, I need to jump a little bit, the remaining prompt templates that I have on Notion, which is fix linter errors and run unit tests, to actually turn them into properly versioned prompt templates and proper tools that I can call in my, actually get rid of all of this for now, in my MCP server, right? So you're clean here. Why is my dog not okay now? So do a git checkout main Everything should be back to normal. Let's check with the Pi project toml. Yep, that looks good. And now I want to start a new conversation. We are in the agentic mode, and I'd look at the current code base. I especially server.py. I'd like to add a new tool in the same structure / style, like, for example, get what's the best one, and the fix one, because we're dealing with linter errors. Interesting. Get prompt fix. Here we are. That's the function we want, with name get prompt fix linter. Yeah, let's call it like that. Linter error, obviously. Tool and the respective prompt template for this. This is my previous template, and let's just copy this. Should work. And this one might not, because I actually don't want to do an actual web query. I just want to have that inside the prompt template. Improve it, please improve it. Improve and align it with the other prompt templates in prompts. Use tool get prompt initial, because obviously we want to drink our own Kool-Aid or dog food thing. I think dog fooding, that's also what it's called in Silicon Valley, which is far, far away. So it checks some stuff and then it calls the tool. Interesting. With some very vague project description. Obviously the project having the argument for project description is probably not that good of an argument structure. So what do I mean by that? Sorry. This is, I think, hard to follow if you don't look at the code. So in my get prompt initial function, I have an argument called project. Project is whatever the value of project is. Here, in this case, it's test project, is the thing that will be fed into, into here. So it will become part of what's fed back to the coding assistant as context / as the prompt. If you look at another of my tools, for example, the proceed, there's another thing called task, right? And it would have made much more sense if the coding assistant or if Cursor basically decided, hey, whatever the user or the developer wrote here will become the value that I feed into the task argument or variable, basically, right? You could also feed it into as specific instructions. Let's maybe do that, just to be safe basically before rebuilding or altering or modifying the prompt template. Specific instructions. And then the tool call should look a bit different. Interesting, it doesn't. I might have actually not provided for no specific instructions. Interesting. So that is also something I need to look into. But let's just run it. It should have enough context still in the background, basically, that it's not feeding into the tool call to know what's going on. It does create a new prompt. Sorry, this was the game plan folder. Prompts, fix linter prompt, and the prompt is coming up here. Yeah, obviously the issue is can be fed into issue, so what are we doing here now? It's not versioning it correctly. Wow, this is really going south. But let's see. Not south, but it's not doing exactly what I want. It's closer to vibe coding without guardrails than it is to what worked for me before. As I said, combining it with MCP server, that's still an open. Apparently, it's a bit harder than I thought, but I will manage. I'm sure we'll get this going and working just the way I want. The tool definition looks good. It has the issue, specific instructions, versions. It's calling the render prompt template, which should obviously load this one, not this one, which is kind of got caught up in. Oh, it might have picked up on this old fixed prompt before we put it into a folder. Actually, let's actually delete this. It needs to handle this. So sorry, this one and this one, you are out of here. So server is okay. It's doing the rest of the server stuff of listing the tools in a tool list and fetch tool functions that need to be there. It did not come up with a game plan. That's the bad part about it, but I'm sure that it will work. We can test obviously by rebuilding this. Yep. And once we rebuild, we will see it as a new tool that is listed when we kind of refresh our prompt template server. While we're doing so, or while we're waiting, let me think about how to tweak the initial prompt template, because obviously putting it into very important is not going to cut it, since in my head this is still an unreleased version. Basically, I don't want to tick up the patch version here. I know, don't hate me for this. I know that this is probably not the best way to do it, but I'm still on my own. I'm not coding within a team, so it's deemed as fine by me, myself, and I. Okay. this response, let's maybe make it really clear that the response, this text, this response is the actual prompt for and thus the instructions I would like you to follow. Maybe I'm being too nice, but I don't think so. I think it's adequate to be nice. I don't know. Maybe I just don't want to end up in a training set of AGI and it looking at us and saying, you never even once said please and thank you. So whatever I'm going to do to you would have been different if you said please and thank you. Let's leave it at that. So this response is the actual, let's really turn this into your very first next step. Ask me, no, not for the timestamp. Ask me for explicit confirmation before proceeding with implementing the first stage of the game plan. Let's see if that's going to cut it. Obviously, this would require another rebuild. Before we do that, we actually checking if the new function, sorry, the new tool, which is beneath it in the backend, is just a function, as we've now seen for a couple of times. So there will be a get prompt fix underscore linter coming up. Here it is, right? So this is in there. Maybe let's do the following to show you that this is working much better, and like the prompting template guardrails are working, just not in the connection or interaction with the MCP server framework. And I'll show you by we're rebuilding this while we're actually starting a new conversation to tackle the remaining prompt template that has not been turned into a MCP server tool yet. And this is 27/11/45, whatever the timestamp was. And just for the sake of completeness, I will copy this one over. Actually, I can have a look at the, no, we didn't create a game plan, so that was, I don't have time for that. So we do this and we do that. The old one is whatever. What's happening here? Now, Notion being Notion. And skill issues on my side, obviously. So this is V01. Sometime in, when do we start with this? The change request is quite new. I think it was about around that time. Fix linter errors. All right, so obviously I think we don't have the do a web search, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. So here we said, hey, do a web search with a certain query, which I would have had to obviously inject manually here. This is not here yet. It's fine for now because I want to go through it once and run unit tests, right? Because this is also something I noticed. I don't know about you, but I mean, unit tests are great, right? You should write unit tests. You can have the LLM write your unit tests, but I saw a breaking change in the paths that the LLM was kind of like taking between creating and running the unit tests, which obviously fail, at least if you have like, I don't know, 5 unit tests and you run through them, at least 3 to 4 fail at the game of creating unit tests. It would sometimes tweak the code so it matched the unit tests instead of, if you're initially starting out, doing it the other way around. I know test-driven development fanatics out there might slaughter me for this, but I mean, come on, it's just reality. It's my reality, at least. You need to tweak the unit tests a bit in the beginning until it actually matches what you want the code to be and what the code is already. And then you are kind of, it should stay more rigid, right? And you should test your code against the unit tests and blah, blah, blah. So I noticed the divergence here and a lot of hallucinations and a lot of context forgetting, basically. And this is how I try to tackle it with this code, with this prompt template. And let's maybe put that into test this out, basically. By going back, by now it did restart or rebuild, so we should, no, let's not do that. Let's, I want to show you once that it actually works quite well by taking MCP server stuff out of the game. So I just need to, I need to update, obviously, I need to use the latest initial prompt here. Should also copy that over in the initial prompt. How do I best do that? Like this, right? V0, 1, 25, 2, 27, 11, 50. It's not 1150, it's whatever. I should actually include the time in here. Doesn't matter. Okay, so I will only copy this part. I don't need this part. So I can get rid of a couple of stuff that's only necessary for when you run this or call this in a MCP server setting. Interesting, and if. Ah, okay, yeah, sure. If specific instructions exist, they don't. Again, look at server.py. I want to create a, let's actually voice type this. I want to create a new tool with the name get prompt unit tests and a respective prompt template in subdirectory prompts. That's it. That's also something it seems to be quite, oh yeah, now it worked. I want to reference a directory. I want to create a new tool with the name get, that's a bit hard to do with voice coding or voice typing to get underscore stuff or like programming stuff voiced out correctly. This one, obviously, unit tests and a respective subdirectory prompts. This is my current prompt so let me type this out or include that because yeah, I just think it makes sense, because obviously it should build on top of what I actually already put in there. Okay, it might get confused with it's actually, no, it should not. There should be, this opens here and it closes here. That's why I think a lot of people have good results with markup, with XML markup. And let's just see. So now what definitely should happen is it coming back with a request for what's the timestamp, and then it should draft the game plan, and then it should come on. Okay, but it should, that's like really the demonstration effect. It's interesting, really. It's I mean, I totally relate that you do not believe me because it's not working. I tell you that it's working, but it used to work for me, but I didn't have the XML stuff. Maybe it gets confused by that a bit. Let's see. Your task, your agency. Let's maybe do it like this. I think this is confusing it. After creating the game plan, ask me to provide the current prompt template. So this is fine still, and up until here I'm still, it's only checking stuff, but it should not create stuff. Nope, this is really interesting. Nope, nope, nope. Create the game plan for the timestamp. So I need to figure out why. I'm assuming it's the way I changed the prompt templates. If you look at the Notion page, I started off with my initial one, which was much more concise, and possibly I made it worse by making it more structured, right? I have to systematically test that. Maybe also 3.7 is too smart. But now, okay, now it's coming back, right? It's laying out the game plan, even though it wouldn't need to in the, I just needed a management summary, but fine. I'm just saying, okay, the timestamp is 27:11. Let's make it noon. And then it definitely should go ahead and create the game plan here. Interesting, but that's, you know, that's the entire reason I'm wanna put together the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Gen AI Coding Galaxy, because it is just fuzzy. It's as much an art as a science in a way. So that's our new game plan, and the management summary. Then it asks me to provide the prompt template, and I'll do so. let's maybe put it this, do it this time a little bit differently. And now it should ask me to actually create this, right? This is still part of the custom instructions that I would like it to have, to always ask me for confirmation before proceeding with the next stage. Let's see if at least after stage 1 it stops now, because that didn't work before either. Actually make this bigger. Okay, so that's the prompt template. We have a unit test prompt, fine. We have a new tool. We should have a new listing here in the fetch tool and a new addition to list tools. Then it should, oh no, it's clearly not sticking through this by stage handling of stuff. So for stage 4 testing, you would need to run the server and blah, 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 since we can run. Okay, so still not great. And what I said before was not true. It's also not working correctly with only copy and pasting the prompt templates. But if you have a look at some of my other videos, it definitely worked better, right? And I need to figure out why it's working worse now. Also, I should test it with Claude 3.5, because back then I still used that. Maybe 3.7 tries to be too smart about it. Okay, but it is what it is for now. So just let's commit the oh, where are we? We are in main. Okay, git add all. Okay. Right, maybe as a the last thing we do for this live stream, let's actually make sure we have also this prompt in, where is it? Oh, interesting. Oh, unit test prompt. I thought it was not created, but let's update our Notion page just for the sake of completeness. Yeah, sure, let's do it that way. This was version 0.1. What did we have before? Something like that. And this is v100 created today. Okay, cool. I think this is enough for now. The next thing, so we do have, even though it's not working completely as intended yet, we do have I do have my fully, I took all the prompt templates from before and put it into tools. Let's put it like that. It's not feature complete yet, especially because it's not still working as I intended to. But we at least have everything in there now. And my next action would be to actually, if we look back at the README and look for Smithery, is to how to get that up and running or published on NPM on Smithery, right? There is, I did manage to publish a tweaked or forked MCP server where I tried to fix a bug myself and then publish it. It's actually coming from, I hope this is okay. open source wise. It's actually, let me at least give a shout out to who actually created that. It's whoever, however you pronounce that, Sam MCJ, an MCP server for retrieving package documentation for various programming languages, but it didn't work for me, so I tried to tweak it, fork it and tweak it. Also put up a pull request, and this thing I actually managed to publish on Smithery, or at least on NPM, and I think from there you can then somehow push it to Smithery, but I don't know how yet, but I will let you know if you want to follow along. I'd be happy to have you, basically, to see you again in the next live stream and or video. I hope this was at least somewhat useful. At least it was reality. I'm showing you how Gen AI coding and also vibe coding can look like, especially when you try to move away from just like pure Wild Western style vibe coding, which can also be fun, but usually when you have something that works, you don't want to break it, and you want to be really systematic on how to, improve it or develop it further with the help of AI still. So I never see either or, I always see but always usually, or not always, but usually involves bringing together two worlds or creating bridges. And in my case, this is the guardrails. The MCP part is just for me, it's just an facilitation or making it easier for me to type, to not having to copy paste stuff, or at least copy paste smaller chunks, because I should be able to say, hey, I want you to use this tool, which would then load the code template, so I don't have to copy and paste the actual code template. But that's coding life in 2025, at least for me. Hope you enjoyed it. My very first live stream with no one probably watching, which is fine. No one in the chat, which is also fine. I might get to 1 or 3 viewers at some day. And catch you in the next one. Bye.